Welcome back to another episode of Make It Visible podcast. Today I am joined by Mr. and Mrs. Shelton. And Miss Shelton and I go way back when we first met at one of the mastermind that we're both belong to. And I personally had experienced what Parisa had to offer. And her husband, Chris, is here joining us to share their expertise in Qigong. In case you don't know how to pronounce it, they're going to tell you exactly why it works, how it works, and why you should know about it. Parissa and Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey there. Thank you
Thanks
for
for having us.
thank you so much for having us.
This is like my first time meeting Chris, and the both of you just look amazing. You look so young, and your vibe is just so out there. And Parissa, I remember you were doing like a teaching session for us during the mastermind call,
Yeah.
and I was just absolutely floored because being Asian, I have this background knowing what Qigong is.
Mhm.
I know what it does, but a lot of our audience don't. Can you tell us about yourself? How did you start the business, and exactly what do you do?
So I started Morning Crane Healing Arts Center back in 2001. At the time, because talking about being an entrepreneur, actually at the time when I started the business, I finished my first 4 years of Chinese medicine and I sat on it for a couple years because I was a single father of two kids and I was a meat manager. So I was a butcher and I didn't know how I was going to transition from cutting up dead cows all day and managing these knuckleheads to healing people. And so, but I took a chance and then started the clinic in Los Gatos, California, which is near San Jose. And so I started teaching Qigong and Tai Chi as well, and then also classes in Chinese philosophy, the I Ching, Feng Shui, Chinese face reading, Chinese nutrition. I think I was Chinese in my past life. Because I understand for me, the whole concept of Qi and the philosophy just makes sense. And then fast forward, what happened is that I met Parisa back in July 2010 and she was teaching Pilates in Los Gatos. Now I had moved my business over to Willow Glen, which is a small suburb of San Jose. And I had a clinic there, plus a small classroom where I was teaching classes and such. And then from there, we met and then we merged. And then in 2011, we spent probably like $250,000, took over the whole half of the building, built a beautiful
Studio.
fitness studio with three treatment
Clinic.
rooms and a Pilates studio. And yeah, and then since then, we've expanded into Los Angeles.
I think that's absolutely amazing and truly inspiring. Well, what really caught my attention is going from a butcher to a Chinese medicine. How did that happen? Like, what was that story about?
So the backstory was so funny because I have a book on how to heal neck and back pain. But anyways, the backstory, the old story
Mhm.
was that I grew up in a dysfunctional home and grew up in East San Jose, started doing drugs at a very young age. Before my 19th birthday, my senior year of high school, I had a heart attack from a crystal meth overdose. And I overheard the doctor talking to my father outside the curtain, said if he was any older, he would have died, but because of his age. So being an addict, I used a few months later, had a second heart attack and I realized like, oh, I need to change something because if I don't change, I'm going to end up dead in prison or both. But I was always highly driven though. So I still graduated high school with in my AP studies in art. And so I started actually becoming a butcher at age 15 and a half. And what happened was that I started doing Taekwondo and I started competing in full contact right away. And then one night before a match, I was accidentally kicked in the back, left me with a devastating back injury. And doctors were saying, Chris, if you don't have surgery, you move the wrong way, you might not walk again or do other things that you take for granted. And another physician, Dr. Nancy Bergman, she had a different perspective and she had a therapist working for her. And he was a martial artist and he was talking to me about Qi. Well, Taekwondo, they call it Ki, right? So when he was talking about Qi in this context, I'm now, what, 21 years old? The closest thing to chi I was going to get was like Cheez-Its, Cheese Whiz. And and so I had other health problems too, severe digestive problems, I had severe sinus problems. I lived on all kinds of antibiotics and medications. Doctors couldn't figure out why my digestive issues were so bad. Luckily, they did not take out my gallbladder because normally the symptoms, they would have taken out the gallbladder. And anyway, I started taking these Qigong classes, and this is over 30 years ago. Not many people were talking about Qigong. They talk about Kung Fu. Bruce Lee at one point was in the Bay Area, started his dojo in Oakland and such, but not Qigong, not talking about Qigong. And so, anyways, after about 6 months of taking these Qigong classes, it was a realization that, oh, When did my digestive issues go away? When did I stop living on all the medications? All my symptoms went away. I couldn't tell you an exact pinpoint day of when it went away, but it was just the realization that, oh, wow, like things have changed. And so I thought if a specific guided meditation and specific guided movement could do this to me, there must be something to the medicine. And that's when I dove in deeper into Qigong as well as classical Chinese medicine.
I really think that's something my audience need to hear because a lot of entrepreneurs and coaches and speakers I know, we're so constantly working our business, right? And it's that constant drive of I want this to work and they're motivated, they want to start the business, they want the business continue to grow and continue to run. And oftentimes we are at the risk of running into major health problem. And most people don't see the major health problem until they get to the point where you have those symptoms that shows up and you're questioning, well, how did I get here? And how do I resolve this? And by that point, if you don't have the correct solution, it's kind of like already too late, right? You either go to surgery or you take a whole bunch of medication. So tell us exactly what is Qigong for those who don't
Yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah. So chi is the life force energy that's in all things from physical, our bodies, the table, this computer, to non-physical, like our emotions, our senses, sight, smell. It's everything around us and within us. Gong is the skill. So essentially, Qigong is an energy skill. We're utilizing movement, breath, and posture in order to harness life force energy to create balance inside our body.
And mind intent.
Mind intent. The leading cause of death and disease is negative emotions and stress. And just like you said, Michelle, if you don't take care of yourself, then eventually one day you'll wake up and you'll go to pick up something off the floor and you won't be able to stand up. So it's really important for busy entrepreneurs to take that time on a regular basis to invest time in ourselves, to turn your cell phone off, go inwards, do some sort of practice where you can recalibrate and rebalance yourself so that you can show up and serve the people that you want to serve at your highest potential and your highest level.
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of time I go with my mom and my grandmother to the park, and there's a lot of people like doing these body movement, and I have no idea of what they're doing, but they tell me, oh, it's a qigong. There's something called the 18th movement or something like that.
Yeah, form. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have no clue what exactly it does and how does it help. So how does it restore your body's overall balance?
So I train diligently with Tai Chi. So Qigong is actually the foundation of Tai Chi. It's also the foundation of Chinese medicine or acupuncture. And so a lot of times in the park, what you're seeing is Tai Chi. And most people do practice Yang style Tai Chi. We practice and train the traditional Chen family Tai Chi Chuan. And so the gentle movements that happen, like what Parisa was saying, there's proper posture. So it's proper body mechanics and alignment. And then it's mindfulness too. So Qigong is more direct. Tai Chi takes longer to learn because it's a whole system and it's a whole form. Qigong is not a whole form, it's not a whole set. There are some Qigong systems that are whole sets, but the style of Qigong that we are teaching is to balance out the internal organs because a lot of people don't realize that the five major organs of your body, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, and your spleen, are mainly responsible for sustaining your life, but also are affected by different negative emotions. So some of the Qigong practices that we teach are to be able to release those negative emotions from those internal organs. This, when I see patients in clinical practice, we do a lot of Q&A. So if you come in with IBS or you come in with GERD or something, we do a lot of Q&A. And a lot of times, for example, those symptoms are due to repressed anger or anger not expressed appropriately, which affects your liver. And your liver and your gallbladder play a huge role in your digestive system. So what these Qigong practices do is it helps you release whether it's a current resentment, but if, like what you're saying, if the symptoms have already showed up where you're having a chronic condition of a GERD or IBS or whatever, this has been accumulating. So chances are it's old anger and old resentment, then coupled on to what's going on in the present moment. So these gentle movements and practices, number one, the mind intent, because I'm focusing on the organ, I'm focusing on the emotion, I'm focusing on the color associated with the organ. And then these gentle movements then help you connect with the internal organism of the body. And then this is what starts to create the release.
Mm.
As you're talking about the IBS, one of my client actually, she's been a chronic struggle for IBS. And so
Yeah.
she pick out her food. She's been very strategic about her diet. She only eats certain food because it triggers her IBS. For
Yeah.
someone who's completely new to Qigong or any of the energy restoring the balance and that process of how we restore our energy, how would one go about doing it? Like if I were to talk to her, like what should I tell her?
Oh, what came to me right away was probably some repressed anger and a lot of worry. And so, with the pillars of Qigong being the mind focus and mind intent coming into grips of, okay, this is actually what's been bothering me. And then you do the flow. There's the 5 organ cleansing exercises. So, for digestive issues, we would recommend the spleen cleansing exercise, where you concentrate and you focus, okay, this is what I feel worried about. You do the movement, you focus on the breath, and literally by doing it 5, 10, 15 minutes later, it's like a release valve. Like on the planet Earth, we have geysers that come up that releases the earth pressure. Humans too. We're a micro and a macro. So it's like we get so much pressure. And if you don't have like a way to release some of that pressure, then it shows up as things like IBS.
Yeah, yeah. And also too, we look at Chinese nutrition as well too.
Oh yeah, you want to look at,
because
but
Chinese,
she is looking at the diet.
yeah, no, but what I'm saying is Chinese nutrition though is different than Western nutrition. So one of the things, for example, that we would recommend too, that here in the West we think is healthy is we say no smoothies
No
and no
smoothie.
cold and raw
No
foods.
salad.
No salad, especially in the winter months. So we also have to look at the energetic properties of food. Everything is qi. Everything is a form of qi. So even if we're talking about food, food also has different energetic properties and affects positively or negatively different internal organs of the body. So we'd also look at that as well too. So I would say at least the style of Qigong, when we look at giving people tools for emotional well-being, it's almost like going to therapy because I'm asking you to pick off the scab, relive a situation, feel the situation, who's involved, what's involved. But by connecting with the situation and by doing this specific movement that's thousands of years old, I didn't just make this up like, oh, this is a good idea to do this move.
Yeah.
This does
It's been passed down.
This works with the liver. I'd tell everybody it works with the liver. They'll believe me. Anyways, and a lot of people don't realize that different colors associate with different organs. Like the color green associates with the liver and gallbladder. And people say, well, how can you know that? Well, look at bile or gallstones. What color are gallstones? They are dark green.
Right.
Right? So you focus on the color green, you focus on the anger, the situation, and then as you do the movement and or the healing sound, then you imagine that leaving like a dark cloud going several feet away from the body and deep into the ground. So yes, I'm picking off the scab, but I'm giving you a tangible tool that connects with where we actually store a lot of this stuff. Yeah, we have memories, but where do we store this stuff in our tissues? And that old saying, we have issues in our tissues, is so true. And specifically within specific organs of the body. And one of the cool things about Qigong and acupuncture is I understand how the organs function according to science. But because of thousands and thousands of years of study on the human organism, these organs have a much, much, much greater functionality. So, and that actually also too energetically will show up on the face. So one of the ways that I diagnose or assess is I read a person's face when they come into clinic, besides their tongue and pulse.
Makes me want to stick out my tongue and say, Chris, can you take a look at my tongue?
The answer is yes.
I love how there's color association because I think it's easier to understand. And now that you said that the gallbladder, well, because it's producing these secretions,
Right.
then it's associated with color of green, which we also brought up the fact that a lot of food, the way that we eat, it also associate that overall picture of the energy. Then do you change your diet because the season goes? Because the season changes, right? Okay. And so what other colors are there in terms of the color that's associated with the organ? And I do want to talk about your book because I know that you've been working on a book. So I'm really excited to hear about that book that you've been working on.
2 books.
2 books. Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at your sweater, Michelle, and it's red, which is the color associated with the heart. And the emotions of the heart are overexcitation, abandonment, loneliness, lack of joy. Whereas the positive virtues are love, gratitude, acceptance. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, and then the color orange or yellow is associated with the spleen in the stomach. And the spleen is affected by the negative emotions of thinking too much, being stuck in your head,
Worry.
worry, anxiety. The color white is associated with the lungs, and the lungs are affected by grief, sadness, sorrow, and loss. And then we have the color blue or black is associated with the kidneys, and the kidneys are affected by fear and shock. And what is shock? Shock is surviving a severe illness, abuse, neglect,
Trauma.
yeah, some kind of trauma, PTSD. So if you're a war veteran, for example, whatever you've seen overseas, at some level, that PTSD has weakened the essence of the kidneys. And the thing about those kidneys is that those kidneys are responsible for how long our life will be. Not if you get hit by a car or something, but your overall longevity is
And your
rooted,
constitution.
rooted in the kidneys, which at the time of conception between God and your parents and your environment predetermines your kidney well. So essentially what happens is that when you practice these Qigong practices, and there's other practices too that help to stimulate the acupuncture meridians that focus on the different seas of energy, which are like chakras in the yoga system or Ayurvedic system. And when you do these practices, what happens is when these emotions start to release, then the organs really start to function the way that they're supposed to be. And when that happens, then the person has a lot of vitality, they have strong energy, their chi is strong, and they will age more slowly.
They have what we call in the Chi Club that good ass chi.
I love that. I must have good ass chi then.
Actually, you do have good ass chi,
You do.
Michelle.
Yeah.
You have good energy.
Yeah,
You
good
do.
energy.
I got that good ass chi. So you mentioned that you've been working on 2 books. Tell us about your book.
Okay.
So the first book is the back book on how to heal neck and back pain yourself. And I was working on that for about 10 years. We spent about $100,000 on
We
it.
had some nightmare
Had some
stories.
nightmare
That's another
stories.
podcast.
That's another podcast
But
for
it's
entrepreneurs.
been birthed.
Anyways, and that's a beautiful book. It's one of its kind. There's no other book out there like it. Of all the diseases that I see in clinical practice, back pain is number one. And most people don't realize that back pain attacks or affects women the most. Hence also the reason why my friend Nare, she's on the cover of the book, is because back pain affects women the most. And also when we did market research, all the other back books out there mostly had nude men on the cover. So I wanted to shake it up. Anyways, I talk about what is the emotional aspect for this neck pain, mid back pain, lower back pain. I talk about chi, I talk about yin and yang, 5 elements. I talk about internal climatic conditions, all these types of things. And so it's in color. She's the model in the book where I'm demonstrating the techniques for the reader to be able to essentially take care of themselves. I did the illustrations and then there's beautiful graphics as well too. So if you're a geek like me and really love Chinese philosophy or Chinese medicine, read the first part of the book. If you just want to say, Chris, I just want to fix my neck pain, go to that part of the book. And what's cool is that there's QR codes in the book as well too. So we have all these videos that once you purchase the book, you scan the QR codes and there's graphs, there's all kinds of things. So anyways, it's going to help.
It's a masterpiece.
It's going to help a lot of people.
What is the cause? Like, what is the emotional cause of these neck and back pain? I'll tell you, I'll be super transparent here. I struggle with the neck pain. Like, it feels like it's just tight here all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
I've learned to deal with it and feel like it's because I carry so much weight on my head.
The weight of the world.
Weight of the world.
The weight of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every single neck issue that I've seen in clinical practice, unless you're doing jujitsu and someone popped your shoulder out or your pitcher popped your shoulder out, every single issue has to do with emotions affecting the heart. Every single one, or some kind of grief. And so reading your face, I'm not going to say this on the podcast. I see certain things on your face that tell me. And so, and I'll just give a quick example though. There's a famous rock and roll star from this rock and roll band. He had cervical arthritis in his neck, and people in Chicago said, "Hey, before you have that neck surgery, cervical surgery, why don't you fly to San Jose to see Chris?" So when he flew in to San Jose, he came into the clinic, and I said to him, I'll call him Joe. I said, "Hey, Joe," I said, 2 years ago, what was happening in your life before the pain showed up?" And he said what everybody says. "Oh, I think my pillow was bad. My mattress was bad." He said, "Oh, I think the stress of being on tour." And then he said, "No, I think the way I hold my guitar on stage." And then he paused and he thought about it. And he said, "Actually, 2 weeks before the pain showed up, my horse died." And so his horse died. He took care of business like we all would. He went back on tour. And one day his body said, "Okay, listen, that hurt you more than it did. So it starts off as what we call as channel pathology first, and then shows up as actual pathology. And he's a funny guy because if you go to our YouTube page, Shelton Qigong, he did a testimonial for me on the TV show Celebrity Sweat. And he said, yeah, Shelton got rid of my arthritis in 30 minutes. And then essentially what happened was I facilitated his body to then heal itself. That's what happened, his own DNA. So all neck issues, it could be something like not expressing childhood stuff and then, or something that revisits, that reminds you of that, or something that a spouse says or somebody else says in a family member, and then you suppress that or don't express it appropriately. And especially if it hurts you, like it hurts your heart, like, or it made you upset. And because the heart and lungs are closely connected together. Like I said, grief and sadness and shame and guilt affect the lungs. The heart is the empress of the body. It's the center of your consciousness. So it's going to dictate how much emotion is going to be expressed or suppressed. And so, yeah, so it's looking at doing an inventory. Okay, honestly, what was going on before the pain showed up? Don't blame the pillow or the mattress. Let's look a little bit deeper than that.
Oh, this is amazing. And I'm really curious what you see now on my face.
I know.
Did you cover that in the book? Can you hold up the book again?
Yes, of course.
I talked about it a little bit. We actually have a course
On face reading.
Yeah, we actually have a course on face reading that we're launching, and it's great because it's a 6-week course, but you can take it whenever you want. You take each section, so I recommend studying one part. Anybody can learn this stuff. And what's fun is that you can start to read other people. So it's really good for personal relationships and business relationships. But the face doesn't lie, because the face doesn't only tell me the personality. What it does is it tells me how a person thinks. And then it tells me what emotions are still trapped inside the body. And then more importantly, what potential diseases are in the body.
What are some of the things that you notice that's trapping in mine?
Okay, so like what Parisa said, you have what is called as very nice, you have what we call as peach luck, a very strong spirit. You have a very good spirit, spiritually open. You think a lot, you get stuck in your head a lot. And
good listener.
Yeah, you're a very good listener, very generous, you laugh a lot, have good stamina, good energy. You can be a little bit flirtatious sometimes.
Don't like to be teased.
Yeah, you don't like to be made fun of or teased. But when we look at going deeper, then we see years of tears. We see years of where you had to endure something, and probably from younger age time, and it has not been fully processed. And so that stays in there. So as we age and we start to look at, oh, where did this high blood pressure come from? I eat right, I'm exercising. We have to go back to that. And then also some of the old anger as well, too. We see that as well. And
where do you see that?
Just gently on her brow bone, and a reluctancy to cry. You're strong.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, you're a strong woman. And when you say something, you want people to respond.
Well, I should all the women, right?
I mean, who doesn't?
I
Right?
should all the women.
Yeah.
And so, but we have a saying when we see this one feature that I'm seeing right now is that tears did not have been fully shed.
I don't think Parisa and I have met in person, but everything that you just said is so true. And my audience, the followers, they probably know more about my backstories and how I got to this point with physical injuries, and that started in childhood. So everything you said, oh my goodness, I cannot say enough a good thing about you.
Oh, thank you.
I just got goosebumps too.
Yeah.
It's crazy how this is our first time of meeting through our podcast, and you have talked about so many of the things that's true for me. And this is our first time we meet. Where will people find the book and also your course?
Go to sheltonqigong.com, and we have all the information. The social media is there. The books are there. We also, on January 14th, coming out with this book, Qigong for Emotional Well-Being. It's the 3rd edition. And then we have a new course that starts on January 15th.
What's the new book about?
Well, the new book is based upon my first book for Qigong practices, but this one is directed towards people with emotional well-being, because mental health, there's not a lot of tools. And during the pandemic and stuff, we saw, because we have government contracts in the Bay Area, and I was successfully seeing patients with COVID, we also were seeing patients with depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, and suicidal ideologies. And so this book is dedicated to all people that suffer. It's meant for everybody, to deal with stress. But this book is really guided to give people tools who suffer from depressive disorders and have suicidal thoughts, or somebody who has recovered, maybe a family member or friend. The good friend of ours who actually brought me to Los Angeles, started bringing me here in 2000.
Wow.
2012. Actually, he was a Hollywood physique expert. He actually committed suicide 2 years ago on Thanksgiving. And there was warning signs ahead of time. And so this book is really dedicated to give people tangible, actual tools. And what I like to tell people is that this is not a belief structure. You don't have to believe in it for it to work. And if it was fake, it would have done itself in years ago, but it's been around for thousands of years. And what I love is that it does not discriminate against age, gender, religious, or spiritual belief structure. Is not that type of thing. What it is that we work out, we do all these types of things, we go for walks, we go for hikes, whatever, but there's not a lot of tools that go inward. True, mindfulness meditation is so good for you, or Vipassana meditation is so good for you because it really gets you into yourself. That's what we call the yin aspect of Qigong. Qigong encompasses that, but also has a yang aspect where every single practice, no matter how simplistic the practice is that I'm teaching you, every single practice is meant to do something medicinally inside the body. So relaxation is just a byproduct.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds very well-rounded. It covered the yin and the yang because it's really the whole balance of how our universe works, and our body is that small universe where it needs to be the whole as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's all encompassing, and having it benefit all people is a marketing nightmare.
Yeah, so it's like our target audience years
He was
ago.
like, buddy.
She would ask me, "Who's our target audience?" I said, "Everybody. It applies to everybody."
No.
And so,
Who do you want to work with?
so what we realize is that actually our target audience is women, and actually our Qigong teacher training course is guided more towards women. And the reason why is because there's another style of Qigong that's a martial arts style. There's something called internal martial arts. A lot of people don't know that Tai Chi is a martial art. I used to fight with it in tournaments, and I was ranked 10th in the US at one point. So a lot of people don't realize that they say that slow movement. They think, how do you fight with Tai Chi? Do you go, tag, you're it? And like, no, no, the slow movements, there's a reason why those slow movements, right? But anyways,
Yeah.
and so because of the internal martial art component with some styles of Qigong, I noticed over the years, because I've been doing this for over 30 years, mostly men instructors with big egos. Now, I'm not saying that women can't have egos too, but these men instructors are really big egos. So it's like, okay, well, let's shift the balance here a little bit. Let's produce more highly qualified women instructors. And our Qigong teacher training course is the most comprehensive course out there. In fact, there's other well-known Qigong instructors who are copying what we're doing and tagging their advertisements on our YouTube page and stuff like that. So it means we must be doing something right.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I just had the experience that one session with Parisa during our call, and it was just absolutely amazing. I was so much relaxed afterwards. And I said, well, I wonder if she can come and talk to my audience, even though it's not her, like, quote unquote target audience back then. But I do feel that a lot of my audience, they're stressed out, overwhelmed entrepreneur who's always doing things. And a lot of us came from a background of that past trauma that
But Michelle, you are our target audience. You
are.
Yeah, you totally are.
Totally
We
are.
love where we want to work with people who are into development and putting it out and helping other people. So
and this is another reason why I think it's such valuable insights that you're bringing to the show, because a lot of us were sitting at home, we're just settling in for the fact that, oh yeah, I got this neck pain. Oh yeah, I got this back pain. But we really don't talk about what are the solutions out there that's maybe we haven't even thought about. And just from the conversation I had with Parisa and Chris today, it just opened my eye to a new possibility, right? I definitely need to give them a visit. So tell us again, where can we find you, and when is that new book going to come out so that more people can benefit and hear from?
Okay, find us at sheltonqigong.com. We have all our information. You can get both books there, all the social media. We have a weekly blog. We're really putting out content on a regular basis. We have an office here in downtown Burbank. So if you're in California, come see us, fly into Burbank if you can. And then we have affiliates in San Jose and Pacific Northwest. We have a teacher training program. We have a weekly subscription class that you can join us on Zoom and catch those recordings. We have a clinical practice. So we've been pretty busy.
Yeah,
You've
so
been pretty busy.
Yeah.
yeah, and what brought me into Hollywood to begin with was by this Hollywood physique expert is because I expect to see transformation right away, not 2 or 3 visits down the road. But more importantly, like we talk about in both books, is giving the power back to you. Meaning, how can you be the best version of yourself and understand your body at a deeper level and give you the tools to be able to take care of yourself? So then that way you don't have to see a practitioner like me.
Exactly. Because I was going to say what we've been programmed to believe about aging and the human body potential and capacity is very underwhelming. Like our potential is so much greater than what we've been programmed to believe. And with these tools in your hand, you can literally unlock a world of your highest potential, greatest health, and whatever you focus on and put your mind to, you can achieve. It's like Napoleon Hill, he says, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve.
I will back it up by saying that this is thousands and thousands of years of Chinese medicine, and they've been around for a very, very long time. So I think that is your true testimonial. It's been around, so learn it.
Yeah, and honestly, I believe in integrated medicine. But if there's some things in Western medicine, science-wise, that we can't even touch. But if you have a condition where the only solution is surgery, I mean, sometimes you might need a emergency surgery or something like that, like an appendectomy, for example, so you don't die. Sometimes that's needed. But if you have a chronic pain condition or something like that, and they want to do surgery or they want to cut something out, or they just want to medicate, that's really where you start to look at these other modalities. Because like I said, I do believe in integrated medicine, but when you're not getting the answers and when you have a certain condition or symptom and they're just medicating you and it's making more symptoms, or they tell you, well, we can't figure out why you have this kind of pain, it must be in your head. Here, take these antidepressants, you must be depressed. That's where you really look at these types of practices to be able to offset and discover, oh, this is actually the root cause. What is the root cause? The branch is the manifestation of the symptoms. And again, I understand how these organs function according to science, but in West Chinese medicine, they have a much greater functionality and they're interconnected, just like we're interconnected. All beings around the world are interconnected. Nobody is separate. For as much as people think, oh, I'm so different from everybody. No, we're not. Yeah, we might have different personalities or belief structures or whatever, but we're all interconnected. Same thing inside the human body as well, too. Those organs are interconnected. And we don't a lot of times think of our liver unless we have a liver condition. We don't think of our kidneys, right? But they are interconnected. And when you have these symptoms that show up, and if you're not getting the answers, you know, this is where it comes in. And going back to the Qigong, is that the Yellow Emperor said, in order to fight disease after disease sets in, is like digging a well after one has become thirsty, or forging one's weapons after engaging in battle. Wouldn't that be too late? So the other part of this Qigong practice too is preventative. Don't allow for these symptoms to show up.
Oh, I was going to say one more thing, which is some people might think like, oh, Qigong, it's like new agey, or maybe it goes against my religious beliefs. But in the Bible, Jesus literally says, greater works than these shall ye do. And this is a person in God form who is healing the sick. He's turning water into wine. He's performing all these miracles. He's saying, greater works than thee, than me, you will do too. And through these practices, what we're really focused on is first healing ourselves, because that's the greatest thing I can do for you. And that's the greatest thing you can do for me. And then helping facilitate and guide others to empower themselves with this knowledge that goes way, way back, since the beginning of time. So
yeah. And if you're listening to this, we don't advertise, especially for the clinical practice, we don't advertise. So people go, they say, you have to see my Chinese medicine doctor. And when people come in and they see me, they're like, what?
Yeah,
Chinese.
You're not Chinese.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You do have Buddha vibes though.
Yeah. What was funny is that when I was a butcher, when I was a meat manager, that's one shop, it was a very small shop, it was me and one other butcher. And he was Chinese and spoke fluent Cantonese. And so after I got done doing my orders and stuff like that, we had a break room inside the meat shop. And so I studied my Chinese medicine books. That's where I was studying. And finally, he was very sarcastic. His name was Alvin. He said, he looks at me, he goes, "You think more about my culture than I do, Guai Lo? Screw you."
That's hilarious. Again, everybody, you can find them at sheltonqigong.com. You can learn everything about the course, the book, and just send them a message, email them, connect with them, go to their building, visit them. They're just an amazing couple, and I really have fun. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can't
Nice
wait to see you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Same
stop by the
here.
office sometime.
Yeah. We're
I
gonna do
will.
Okay.
that.
Bye.
Ciao.
Chia.